Okay, now let's go ahead and add a main view fragment to show our meal. So I'm going to once again start by creating a new fragment, and this time I'm just going to create a blank one. And I'll create the layout XML, but I won't include the factory methods or interface callbacks. And let's call this meal fragment. So we have a meal list fragment, which is the list of meals, and a meal fragment, which is the currently selected meal. And it'll take great a little while to resolve everything. So let's look at what we get here. This extends fragment. It's got an empty constructor, and then just an uncreate view that expands the layout. And so let's look at the layout. And this is going to be our fragment meal. So we have a frame, and it just has a text view inside of it. So let's go ahead and change this to a linear layout. And we'll add orientation vertical. And let's go ahead and change that to and let's put gravity in there to center everything. And we'll have a text view, which is the name of the meal. And we'll have an image view, wrap content. And let's make these wrap content as well. And the ID for this one will be meal picture. Okay, so now we have a view. Let's go ahead and change our main. So now we have a place to stick in our list. Let's add a place to stick in our picture. And once again, this is going to be a singleton tag. And this will be the meal fragment. Okay, so now there's a place to add that. Let's go to our main activity and the startup method. So we already have a transaction. Let's just go ahead and add the meal as well. And this is going to be a new meal fragment, not meal list fragment, but meal fragment. Whoops. There we go. Okay. So in our meal fragment, let's go ahead and add a set meal method. So public void set meal, and this is going to take a meal item, and so our main activity is going to call this set meal method whenever it's ready to change the meal. So when the user clicks on the list will execute the callback in the main activity, and then that callback will call the set meal method on the meal fragment to update the picture. So what we're going to do is first let's get the text view for the meal name. Now we have a little problem here. Fragments do not have find view by ID because they're not in the hierarchy of views or activities. So what we need to do first is get the view that this fragment is attached to, and then have that view find the resource. So we're going to say get view dot find view by ID, and we want our r dot ID dot, and then this is meal name, and let's also get the picture. Let's call this meal. Yeah, name text is fine. Alt plus enter. So we're going to do the same thing. Use get view to find view by ID, r.id dot meal picture. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is set the text of the meal name and then we want to set the picture image resource to item.getPicture. Alright, so this will set our meal. So let's see what we have so far. We're not calling set meal yet, but let's make sure that the layout is okay. I don't think it is. I think we need to do one other thing first. Right, so the width of the list is full screen. It's match parent, so we don't have any room to show our picture here. So what we want to do is go to our activity main, and even though it's wrap content, it's still going all the way. So what we want to do, make this 0dp and add a weight to it of 1. And then we'll make this 0dp as well and add a weight of 5. Let's make it 4. Okay, so 20% for the list and 80% for the picture. And let's go ahead and do the set meals to, well, let's go ahead and test it first. Make sure that we have enough room for the meal view. Okay, so yeah, so we have our blank fragment text and all of our stuff here. So looking okay so far. So now when the user clicks on the button, somehow we have to make the main activity call the setText method on the MealFragment. So right here, where we get a meal item, we have to call setView of the MealFragment. But we have to get the MealFragment. And that's a little more complicated because we don't know whether it's been added yet or exactly what's going on. So what we're going to do here is we're going to implement an onAttach method in our MealFragment so that whenever it gets attached, it's going to execute a callback method on the main activity that's going to store the MealFragment in the main activity. So we'll see how that works. Basically, this guy here is going to have a private MealFragment and then let's go ahead and go back here. So what we want to do is define an interface called onAttach MealFragment. And it's only going to have one method, public void, and it's going to pass in the MealFragment fragments. So this says that in order to implement unattached MealFragment, you need to provide this method. And then in our unattach, this is going to get an activity. And the first thing we want to do, Alt plus Enter, the first thing we want to do is check whether this activity implements unattached MealFragment. And if it does, then we'll go ahead and call the callback. So if activity is an instance of unattached MealFragment, then we'll call activity dot unattached MealFragment, and we'll pass in this. So if our main activity implements this method, then we'll pass back our MealFragment. So now we have to make our main activity implement that callback. Unattached MealFragment. So now we're getting a squiggly under here because I've used the wrong syntax. This is actually there. I'll tab that. Okay, and we're still getting a squiggly because we haven't implemented this method yet. So I'm going to implement the method, and that automatically adds this. So here now I need to decide what I want to do with this fragment, and I'm going to set my end MealFragment equal to it. So now whenever the fragment gets attached to my main activity, it's going to execute this callback, and my main activity will know how to find the MealFragment. So here we can call our set meal. And pass in the meal. So let's see what happens. And we have an error, so let's see what that error is. Super not called exception. So fragment meal activity did not call through to super on attach. So I did the same thing. I forgot to call the super method here. Okay. Right? So home, beef, chicken, and fish. Now I could fiddle with this layout a little bit so that it looks a little nicer. In particular, that's a little odd. So let's go ahead and do that. So in my activity main, let's go ahead and center everything in our linear layout. A little better. I have to figure out why this beef is floating up on the picture so much. Let's take a look at the hamburger for a second. Oh, well, it's really big, so that's causing some issues. So I have Android Studio configured to use GIMP as my default picture editor, so I can just right-click here and jump to External Editor. And I will convert the colors, and let's go Image, Scale Image. Let's make this 500 wide, and Scale, and then Overwrite, Export. And so here's what it looks like full size. So full size is still relatively large. Discard changes. Okay, so now let's try it and see what happens. That's better. Okay, so that's it for our meal fragment. In the next video, we'll do some finishing touches.